I think I'm always going to love indie games. We live in an age where gaming technology is becoming more advanced year after year, and the biggest companies are always pushing boundaries with their employees numbering in the thousands, but despite all of this, there's still room for those passion projects made by small teams. But dreams still cost money. Ah yes, because the world can't spin properly without a hefty dose of cash to help grease the wheel and to help churn out all of those games that we know and love. It's a cold look at the world, I know, but one that shines a light on the requirements behind making a video game. Kickstarter launched in 2009 with the aim of bridging the massive gap between a concept and a finished product by allowing the public to put their own money towards funding an idea, ranging from food items to artsy things to, of course, indie games. It's a wonderful concept that allows an intimate relationship between fan and video game, but that's sometimes to its detriment. There's greater pressure on an indie game to succeed when it's being made with hundreds if not thousands of people's money, and when projects crack under that pressure, the result can be quite messy. Just a bunch of really angry people wanting to know what their money has been spent on and being furious when their expectations are let down. Not that I'm here to blame anyone really, since game development is complicated as well as hideously expensive, and if you ever spend any time working on a game or even checking out behind the scenes footage, you'd question how any game ever gets made. But hey, I'm just a guy making a video that's looking over the situation like some kind of terrible nuclear fallout. I sure hope it doesn't spread. I knew as soon as I started talking about misguided Kickstarter video games that I would have to tackle the sensitive subject of Star Citizen. I say sensitive because the primary aim of this video is to highlight some of the awful practices that are rife throughout some of the worst campaigns on Kickstarter, but there's no way of looking at Star Citizen that will give you the immediate sense that this belongs anywhere near a worst games list. There's so much detail and incredible design on display that it seems inherently divorced from bad practices and exploitation of fans to drive up funding, but dig a few inches below the surface and it soon becomes very apparent that Star Citizen is kinda gross to think about. This game launched its initial Kickstarter campaign in 2012, which was pretty damn successful, drawing in over $2 million and setting developers Cloud Imperium Games well on their way to a 2-year development cycle and for Star Citizen to release in 2014. Here's the thing though, I know you aren't stupid, you can see these trailers, right? They want 2 years and $2 million to create a vast multiplayer flight simulator trading space game? Yeah, that'll happen. The easy comparison to make is with something like No Man's Sky or even a game like Elite Dangerous that attempt to make something out of the infinite size of space, but do so against the backdrop of an understanding of what it means to generate this much stuff. Star Citizen is slightly less obsessed with exploration and more so the combat and trading side of things, but it is still a game that doesn't do much to sidestep the issue of representing outer space. The reality of the situation is that Star Citizen is a game that is never coming out. Its 2014 release date is long gone, with Cloud Imperium saying that the plan now is to release chunks of the game one at a time, with the latest module being 6 years old in 2021 and no new release window being given beyond the original date. Despite this, Star Citizen continues to garner support and new players, and it's even raised an extra $300 million from external non-Kickstarter related sources, all for a game that is never coming out. I don't know if it's being actively still worked on and if Cloud Imperium have any designs at all on an official release for Star Citizen, but for now the money keeps pouring in. Why would you ever want it to stop? Funding campaigns for virtually anything, not just video games, are very reliant on momentum. Now, let's say you've got a $1 million goal in mind, and you have to be aware that you're not going to get there quickly. You need lots of contributors putting forward small amounts of money for quite a long time, and eventually you might get close or surpass it or something. But what you need, potentially, is an existing audience that you can direct towards this project. You know, let's say you have a social media presence or maybe 1 or 2 million subscribers on YouTube. The distinction between a YouTube channel as a form of entertainment and a channel as a brand is mostly down to how it's marketed and commercialized to the wider world. As soon as you get any popularity at all on this platform, you'll find that there are people who will want more than just free videos to watch every couple of days and are excited by the thought of showing their support by purchasing merchandise. If my channel was a lot healthier than it is right now and I announced that I wanted to make a video game that you could all fund through Kickstarter, there's a fair chance that some of you would climb aboard and put some money down to help me. And hey, if that could work with me, imagine what it could do with a channel as big as the Yogscast. I used to watch these guys all the time back in the day, mainly when I was super interested in Minecraft, and it was roughly around that time that I realized the Yogscast were making something called Yogventures. I hadn't heard of Kickstarter around that time, so the idea of a game being made by some people I watch on YouTube that I can contribute to was kinda crazy, to be honest. From the Yogscast point of view, it makes a lot of sense, and launching a Kickstarter campaign while they're experiencing some impressive growth and a surge in popularity is a smart move to make, but of course, it wasn't the Yogscast who were making Yogventures. Red flag number one was the project being helmed by Wintercule Games, who I've never heard of, and didn't last long once this game went under, but this level of inexperience becomes more of a problem when you unpack just how ludicrously overambitious Yogventures was. Understandably, it's a Minecraft clone, but it wanted to have a complex physics engine with destructible terrain and crafting and procedurally generated worlds, and very quickly we're looking at a game that was always destined to fail. It raised just over $500,000 and had a closed beta released to backers in 2013, but less than a year later, the project was canned. A project that was billed as a Yogscast creation with help from Wintercule that was quickly reduced to the failure of one inexperienced developer. Maybe fans shouldn't follow the word of their favourite creators so blindly. I'll promote my Patreon at the end, you'll have all forgotten by then. It's one of the harsh truths that you learn eventually when growing up, that things created out of a sense of artistic expression are heavily influenced by hard cash. Games are definitely made a certain way to appeal to large groups of people in order to turn a profit so that more games can be made in the future, and whereas a well-oiled AAA developer can throw money at a project and see results, indie devs are more reliant on their own back pocket, and more often than not, services like Kickstarter to help fund their creation. Game development isn't cheap either, even if your dev team consists of just a few friends, which is why my eye was immediately drawn to Ant Simulator and its unique attribute of going ahead with a successful Kickstarter campaign to raise just $4,000. Except that's not quite what the devs were selling, because it's actually a series of tutorials that help to pull the curtain back on game development and showcase how easy all of this is, aptly demonstrated by Ant Simulator, an impressive, albeit simplistic slice of ant life. You know, it's the sort of thing you'd see kicking around on Steam Greenlight before that was shut down, just a harmless, very crude depiction of something that most people have never considered for too long. Doesn't sound so bad to me. But you see, this is a project fraught with controversy because the $4,000 was spent on everything except for game development. The team was led by Eric Terazinski, who found Etixi, so that this small group of people could bring some games and game dev tutorials to life through a small nugget of funding from Kickstarter in 2015. They reached the $4,000 apparently required to make Ant Simulator, but little over a year later, the project was hastily cancelled, with Terazinski claiming that all of the money had been wasted away by members of his own team on, as he puts it, liquor, restaurants, bars, and even strippers. So, the plan was to make a video game about ants, but the team behind it were almost entirely too busy living large and pissing all the money up the wall, with Terazinski claiming that he couldn't pursue a lawsuit due to the legal costs required to recoup just $4,000. Interestingly though, Terazinski's co-workers have since come out and said that claims of embezzlement are 100% bullshit, so perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle, or both sides will always say the other is lying and we'll never know truly what happened to the money. Damn guys, I just wanted to crawl around on the floor and eat some leaves. Why are you going to make everything so complicated? Many people watching this will only be aware of Kickstarter because of one infamously bad campaign from a handful of years ago that brought the service into the public eye in quite a negative way. Kickstarter campaigns fail all the time. I'd love to know the statistics behind it, but there's never any guarantee that a game is likely to live up to some pretty gigantic expectations just because a lot of money has been thrown at the dev team, and this ultimately proved to be the case when 67,000 backers gave Keiji Inafune and his dream team of veteran game developers close to $4 million to create a spiritual successor to Mega Man. It doesn't take a genius to see why the project gathered so much funding, since Mega Man as a franchise was floundering for relevancy in the mid-2010s, and the prospect of Inafune crafting a new IP with the same feel as Mega Man was too enticing to pass up. Hey, it'll even have Mighty in the title, so it's gotta be great. Sorry, I misspoke. With that amount of money and pedigree, it's gotta be good at least, surely. How could it not be? Believe it or not, but there was a point in time when people were really excited for Mighty No. 9, because Capcom made it pretty clear that they had no immediate plans to do anything with Mega Man, and the series has kind of drifted for a few years at that point, and so who better to lead some kind of spiritual successor that can give the world the Mega Man that they need than the man who was the driving force behind so many classic Mega Man games. You know, we know better now, but it is fun to look back on and think that, wow, there was optimism behind this game. Just so long as you didn't put any of your own money down on this and waste it all away. But of course, Keiji Inafune is hardly the driving force behind anything to do with Mega Man. In the early days, he was little more than a designer for things like Enemies and Robot Masters, with his first producing role coming years later with Mega Man 8. So he's definitely an important part of Mega Man's history, but hardly the central cog that kept everything together. A fact that became all the more apparent when every update shared to the public after Mighty No. 9 started to manifest as some horribly designed, poorly optimized shadow of what it should have been. Even a functional version wouldn't have been anything too groundbreaking. There have been plenty of other spiritual successors that have done quite well for themselves when attempting to match up to the lofty heights of older Mega Man games. And it leaves Mighty No. 9 feeling embarrassingly ill-equipped to take up the mantle. The problem is that you can feel a good game in there, but it's buried under obtuse level design and lukewarm mechanics that both feel like they would have benefited from some playtesting. A problem indicative of the wider issue that devs' concept wasted time and money behind the scenes. The immense letdown, the broken promises, the fact that Mighty No. 9 still hasn't released on the 3DS or PS Vita, all speaks of a project that may have started with enthusiasm and optimism but ran out of steam long before the end. And hey, Capcom have brought Mega Man back now and it feels like he never left. It's probably better to pretend that he never left. Since I've started this video, I've come to the conclusion that it's very hard to judge Kickstarter games. There's actually a dozen or so metrics by which you can decide if a game is bad or not, and I think over the course of this video, I've angled my criticism more so towards being a letdown and failing to become half the game that it should have been, especially with so much backing from fans. That being said, I can feel fairly confident with my number one pick because of the many ways it betrays the fans that believed in the project enough to help fund Peter Molyneux's most recent over-exaggerations. You know, that guy who tends to get a bit too excited about his upcoming video games and does a lot of his own marketing by just spouting bullshit and seeing what sticks with people. He had this weird social experiment game about very slowly stripping layers off of a giant cube with millions of other people, with the center apparently containing a life-changingly amazing reward for one individual lucky enough to reach the center. Turns out that all that was waiting for you was more Molyneux madness. In the end, curiosity what's inside the cube was little more than a marketing stunt, designed to drum up interest in Molyneux's brand new project Goddess and its subsequent Kickstarter. The idea was to incorporate the winner of Curiosity within Goddess itself by making them the virtual deity that rules over all other players in this god simulator experience. And a portion of the game's revenue, a role given to Brian Henderson. Unfortunately, Brian would never receive his prize, as Molyneux's team would slumber through development and fail to implement most of the features outlined in the Kickstarter, let alone working in anything to reward Brian for winning Curiosity. With Molyneux seemingly abandoning the project, many fans requested refunds on Goddess, and since it has never left early access or the freemium model used on mobile devices full of microtransactions, Goddess supposedly hasn't turned enough of a profit for Brian Henderson to receive anything. So this is a game that has little to no value, as well as ruined the legacy of another game? That has to be some kind of record, holy shit. This is from RabbidLuigi, and there is a large part of me that really admires the ambition on display here from Peter Molyneux. If you're trying to create a new game studio, then the kind of publicity that Curiosity gave them is a good PR stunt, it's a good thing to do. If you're the kind of guy who loves his ideas so much that you think they're golden and there's nothing wrong with them, then it's a good idea. My problems kind of arrive with Goddess and how that whole project was handled and money was mismanaged and the whole relationship with Brian Henderson was just terrible and kind of, it destroys two games in the process, so I have to talk about it as a #1 pick. What Peter Molyneux needs is a guy on his shoulder telling him that his ideas are stupid and guiding him in the right direction. I mean, I haven't got anything else happening right now. Hi, just want to give a quick shout out to some of my top supporters on Patreon. We have Ramon Alberto, Jerome Kiryu, Fusion Warrior, Sarah Malion, Christopher Robinson, Joe Creamer, Scott Riker, Frank Guillong, I think, I'm so sorry, The Green Scorpion, and Devon Hunt. Thank you all for supporting what I do on YouTube, and if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/RabbidLuigi, where I post updates and behind the scenes stuff, and we generally have a really good time. Also, what topic would you like to see me cover next? Leave your suggestion in a comment on this video, because I'll be taking the best ideas and making a poll on my community tab, which you can then vote on to decide what the next video is about. I'll be announcing the winner of the poll over on my Twitter, so make sure you follow me so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.